Welcome everyone who's joining this Conscious Capitalism virtual gathering. It's such a pleasure to have you all here, and we're at the bottom of the hour. We only have 30 minutes scheduled today, so while everyone starts to join, I'm going to go ahead and just kick this off to make sure that we get the most of our time together with each other. My name is Alexander McCoben, and I'm proud to be CEO of Conscious Capitalism, Inc., a nonprofit organization that supports a global community of business leaders dedicated to elevating humanity through their businesses. We provide business leaders with innovative and inspiring experiences designed to connect you with conscious businesses in the conscious capitalism community and provide insights and tools to help level up your operations and leadership. Collectively, the work of the conscious capitalism movement shows day in and day out that capitalism is a powerful force for good, especially when practiced consciously. Now, for members of the conscious capitalism community business, we recognize that it's practiced consciously when it follows a framework known as the 4 tenets. These 4 tenets were solidified in a book affectionately known as the Yellow Book in the network called Conscious Capitalism. You might see it behind me in my bookshelf here. But what we want to do with today's virtual gathering is provide an introduction into what this philosophy is. So if you haven't read the Yellow Book yet, or you're wondering whether you should, hopefully this is a great teaser to get you to do that and get engaged with the rest of the conscious capitalism movement. And I'm going to be interviewing Karen Sammon, one of our incredible board members who has a rich history and experience of putting conscious capitalism into practice in a variety of ways throughout her career, who's going to share her story on how conscious capitalism can go from this big theoretical idea to something that's very tangible put into practice. Now, before I turn it over and start talking with Karen, I want to give an introduction to these 4 tenets: a higher purpose, conscious culture, conscious leadership, and stakeholder orientation, to give you a sense of what conscious capitalism means when we start to talk to Karen. Now, higher purpose is the first tenet of the conscious capitalism philosophy. It is a company's why. Elevating humanity through business begins with knowing why your company exists, especially for a reason beyond just making a profit. It's not that profit is bad, profit is great, but it's a means to achieve a higher purpose to the business. It's not an end in and of it itself. Some examples from the conscious capitalism community are We Care for People So They Can Be Their Best by Hyatt, to help our clients and colleagues pursue their greatest potential, make a meaningful difference, and enjoy the journey from JVN Consulting, to create a meaningful energy future together, IGS Energy, and to inspire and empower others to spend life wisely, from First United Bank. Studies show that a higher purpose can have powerful results for a business. Gallup has found that 90% of employees in a purpose-driven company report feeling engaged versus 32% in other companies. And a study at the Korn Ferry Institute found that companies focused their purpose and annual growth rates nearly 3 times the annual rate for their industry. The second tenet is stakeholder orientation. A business needs to create value with and for its various stakeholders, finding a win-win-win solution for all. These stakeholders include employees, customers, suppliers, investors, society, the environment, and it may be others that you and your business identifies as key to your operations of groups that you impact. In 2019, just last year, the Business Roundtable released a statement on the purpose of a corporation, which embraced this part of the conscious capitalism philosophy wholeheartedly. In their statement, they made clear commitments to their stakeholders, including delivering value to their stakeholders, investing in their employees, dealing fairly and ethically with their suppliers, supporting the communities they work within, generating long-term value for shareholders, and seeing all of their stakeholders as essential. And that's what stakeholder orientation is about. The third tenet is conscious leadership. Conscious leaders understand and embrace the higher purpose of their business and focus on creating value for and harmonizing the interests of all of their stakeholders. They recognize this integral role of culture and cultivating a conscious culture in their business, really looking to be servant leaders who display the qualities of strength, energy, and enthusiasm, along with long-term orientation, flexibility, and this might be where things get a little different, but love and care, emotional, systematic, and even spiritual intelligence of embodying the values of a company. That is the next level leadership that conscious capitalism brings to bear for businesses. And the fourth tenet is a conscious culture. This is the ethos, the principles, the practices, the everyday interactions, the underlying fabric of a business which permeates the atmosphere of the company, connecting all the stakeholders to each other and to the purpose, people, and processes that comprise the company. Every company has a culture, but not all companies intentionally develop their culture in a way that promotes their values and purpose and allows people to bring their full authentic selves to the table. And a quick way to think about what a conscious culture entails is to think of it as something that's tactile, that involves trust, accountability, caring, transparency, integrity, loyalty, and egalitarianism. In a Bain & Company study recently, they found that 70% of business leaders agree that culture provides the greatest source of competitive advantage for businesses. And so conscious capitalism emphasized bringing a conscious approach to that culture as a competitive advantage and as just the right thing to do. Now, it's important to realize what conscious capitalism is not as well. Conscious capitalism is not a call for you to sacrifice your profits or growth for the sake of doing good. We see them as integrally related to each other and dependent on each other. It's not the idea that you need to apologize for being in business. We believe business is fundamentally good, ethical, noble, and heroic. It's not a checklist of things to do, but rather it's a business strategy to weave into the DNA of your company at all levels. It's not a reflection of any political stance. This is apolitical and in many ways transpolitical. This is a unifying force that people can agree on and work together to make a better world with. It's not a marketing strategy or tool. It's not a form of corporate social responsibility that you tack on after everything else you do. And it's not a business strategy owned by the CEO alone or any individual in a company. It's something that to really succeed and propel the business forward needs to be embraced and practiced by every member of the organization and permeate throughout everything a company does. Now, that's all very high level and introduction to conscious capitalism, but to really explain, articulate, and illustrate what this is, I am absolutely thrilled to introduce Karen Sammon, one of Conscious Capitalism's board members, who is the former CEO and president of PAR Technology, whose expertise in turnarounds and digital and cultural transformations has propelled her career to lead her to not only being a member of Conscious Capitalism's board, but also a board member for Daily Table out of Boston, Massachusetts, and developing her own investing and advising relationships with lots of other entrepreneurs and business leaders. That really is an inspiring story and gives her a lot of examples that she can relate to share with you as to what conscious capitalism looks like in practice. Karen, thanks so much for joining us today and sharing your story and what conscious capitalism means with everyone on this call.
Alexander, it's awesome to be here with you. Thank you for inviting me.
So let's start at the beginning. When did you begin to consider yourself not just a capitalist, but a conscious capitalist?
So I think that I can answer that kind of in two ways. First, I'm just wired. I'm wired this way. So I didn't have a language around conscious capitalism, but I grew up in a family where my father was, or is, a technologist and an entrepreneur. My mother was an activist. She did a ton of community service. And so I grew up in a family where it was expected that we'd work hard and give back. And more specifically, when I really found conscious capitalism and I knew that I was a conscious capitalist, it was in the early 2010s that I joined a company to perform a turnaround. And and when you're doing a turnaround, it's really complex and difficult. And in addition to doing the turnaround, we were doing a transformation. The company was a hardware manufacturer and a systems integrator, and we needed to bring the company forward to this digital transformation, to be a cloud-based software solutions company. And to do a transformation, we really needed the people to embrace all the change that was going to happen. And we were projecting that the strategy would take around 10 years to accomplish. And if the employees were not on board, it would be like an organ transplant rejection, and we could fail. Most transformations do fail. So knowing this, we really needed to bring the whole organization together. I also knew that I needed to have our shareholders, who were a public company, the employees, our customers, suppliers, all needed to go on this journey with us as we went from a transactional type of revenue stream to recurring revenue. So it was a really big shift, and it was going to be across the whole company. I was working with Fred LeFranc. He's a conscious capitalist. He was a consultant for me, and on our strategy. And he told me about conscious capitalism. This was probably in late 2013, maybe early 2014. So I read the Yellow Book. I read Conscious Capitalism, and it spoke the language of how I viewed business, how I viewed our employees, all of our stakeholders. And it gave me language that helped me to communicate to the stakeholders what we were doing, how we were going to achieve it. So going to the CEO Summit that I hope that we have again in 2014, it was not only it was the combination of everything that I had read in the book, but in community with 200 executives who were on the same journey in different phases of the journey and speaking the same language. And it was absolutely at that moment that it crystallized that I am a conscious capitalist, and this was the direction that we needed to go forward with.
I love that story, Karen, and I love hearing the connection with Fred LeFranc bringing you into this. I actually didn't know that before, but Fred is just introduced conscious capitalism to so many people. Some people on this call may know him as well.
He is a connector. He's fantastic.
And so you mentioned the CEO Summit. Unfortunately, we're not able to host that this year, as you know, Karen, because we're not able to organize large in-person gatherings. But perhaps you could actually share what the CEO Summit is for those who are new here and why that was such a meaningful experience for you.
Yeah, the CEO Summit is a special event, and when we have it again, I hope that everybody that is listening will consider participating. It's a gathering of 250 around CEOs who are there to share their experiences and learn. So we bring something and we take something back from the experience. And it's a 3-day event where there are different speakers and workshops where we can really participate in a very open, safe community for that 3 full-day period. So it's not only just the sessions that we attend, but it's also the lunches and breakfast and the yoga that we do together, where we really are able to develop deep friendships and learn how people are incorporating the tenets of conscious capitalism, because conscious capitalism is this fantastic philosophy that different companies pull together in different ways that make sense for their organizations. And so it's a sharing of fantastic ideas and best practices from the conscious capitalism philosophy and 4 tenets.
So we're crossing our fingers on our side too that next year we're going to be able to hold it again after we get through this COVID pandemic. But it really is an amazing experience, and thanks for sharing that with everyone, Karen.
Thank
so
you.
Let's go through some of the tenets of conscious capitalism and how that's shown up for you and what you've seen. What does conscious leadership look like for you?
So conscious leadership, I'll talk about it in terms of how I like to show up as a leader and leaders I've learned from. through conscious capitalism and either directly by meeting them and having conversations and reading the books that they have shared with us. I think foremost it's stewardship. So you mentioned the spiritual side of conscious capitalism, and I think stewardship is so important because conscious leaders, for as a generalization, are very selfless, but also exercise self-care. So it makes us a strong, that allows us to show up as the best leader that we can. We focus on people. As I used to say, we like building the people who build the business. We just don't build the business, we build the people who build the business. Conscious leaders seek out diversity. We understand that inclusion drives creativity and innovation. Conscious leaders are curious. Conscious leaders listen. There's a high level of humility and awareness. And I think that, empathy, of course, is part of this as well. There are leaders like, we have amazing leaders in our organization, like Kip Tyndall, Container Store. In my area, in Syracuse, New York, Dr. Kimberly Townsend from Loretto. She is a conscious leader. Safwan Shah from Pay Active. So some of our lesser known, but really impactful, amazing leaders. These are conscious leaders. Tony Portman from Walkabout Workplace. These are all leaders who really demonstrate these characteristics and have built amazing organizations as a result.
And the one note I want to make when we talk about spirituality or spiritual intelligence and spirituality and leadership, that's not a religious concept. It really is bringing the spirit, the energy, and embodying the values of the company to bear in your leadership. Would you agree with that, Karen?
Yeah. And I thank you for kind of rounding that out. I'm talking about like servant leadership, like being really taking care of your people, because when you take care of the people, your organization will do amazing things for you.
Thank you. So let's talk about conscious culture. What does conscious culture in a company mean to you?
So culture was really important, and I think probably was the first tenet that I really embraced, because we were doing a digital and cultural transformation and taking an organization that was structured to be manufacturing and bringing it forward to being a software-led organization. These are different kinds of jobs, they're different kinds of skill sets, and not everybody can make the journey. And so being able to, when you're thinking through how you're impacting not only your organization, but their families and the communities, it is a heavy weight. And so making sure that the culture for me pulled through was incredibly important. So a conscious culture has to start with the foundation of trust. And you mentioned this. Fear is not a motivator. And when people say that, I cringe, because that's not how you get the best out of people and out of your organization. It actually is with love and empathy and care. And that's in that building that foundation of trust can drive that for your organization. I see that not only in how I built PAR, but also I see it in organizations within our community. Studio Movie Grill, Brian Schultz's organization, is absolutely based on this concept of trust and love. Being values driven, then this is really it's hard and it's not hard. Establishing your values, they come from the organization. Closing the gap between your walk and your talk, it can be hard. And I found it in myself and in leaders within my organization. And it's something that I worked to close the gap. So there was no light between the walk and the talk. And I do see that again in other organizations, like the Motley Fool, David Gardner's organization, David and Tom, Conscious Capitalist, and and amazing leaders with amazing corporate cultures and conscious cultures. I think that a conscious culture also really embraces diversity, and diversity in race and gender, diversity in thought and ideas, to the full full definition of diversity. So when you have a diverse culture and you listen very carefully, just great ideas. Great ideas appear and can be executed to, and that again builds that level of trust. Um, I think that finally focusing on learning, and so that curiosity of the leader leads to a learning organization, one that's willing to support trying and failing and trying again. Again, it's easier to say the words than it is to continually put it into action. But I see this, those companies that really embrace this really succeed, and really create this culture of just creativity and finding solutions to problems, and not not seeing the barrier but seeing the opportunity.
And we're starting to get questions. I want to turn over to those in a minute and see how many we can fit in before we have to leave. But I want to ask one more. How has this concept of stakeholder orientation shown up for you in your career?
Mm. Stakeholder orientation, it's it's sometimes it's critical, right, to establish the stakeholders who are in your ecosystem, and to try to keep the equilibrium, to keep all of it healthy. And it's harder. Sometimes it's harder to or it's easier to, like, say these are our stakeholders and this is how the equilibrium that I want to achieve. But I have constraints, and so as our job as leaders is to be able to work through to find those win-win-win situations, where really your shareholders are understanding the change that you're doing, and so, as well as your customers, and so everybody can see what the outcome is going to be. But being able to find the ability to create those win-win-win situations is critical. And I've experienced it throughout my career. And and always when I read different experiences, am energized by the opportunities that companies find between their suppliers and their customers and their shareholders and their employees, and where they really do create that extra energy that pulls you through in difficult times, especially.
Thank you, Karen. So I want to get to a couple of questions from people who are joining us today, because these are really good ones. And the first is from Max Geerling, who says, thank you for sharing this. What would you say are some of the first mindsets someone needs to change or adopt to grasp they're getting the right understanding of what conscious capitalism is about?
That's a great question. So, Elton, I don't know what you would say, but I think that recognizing your biases, is one thing. Having an open heart to new ideas and new ways of thinking is really important, because sometimes people will just feel like it's touchy feely or it's woo woo, and it's not. This is neither of those things. Being able to recognize that there's ways to measure the positive impact of these of the philosophy of conscious capitalism can be done. So I think that changing your mindset, and recognizing that you will come in with blind spots, and just trying to feel where like if something's making you uncomfortable, it's probably you're stretching and you're probably learning.
I think that's awesome. Thank you, Karen. So Mary Kavanaugh has a question. She says that she runs a program at a university. Is there an entry point for students or ways for them to learn more about conscious capitalism in addition to the work that we do with CEOs and other executives?
Well, maybe you can handle that question even better than I can, but I can say that yes, I have talked to different universities about programs that they are teaching, that they are supporting students to create conscious capitalist um, forums for themselves. I've seen it at business schools, and Alexander, maybe you can take it from there.
So I think that's the right answer. And there are lots of conscious capitalists out there, like you, Karen, like those who are leading chapters across the country who would love to speak to classes and share their stories and introduce conscious capitalism to them. So if you reach out to Conscious Capitalism Inc. or a chapter in your area, we can connect you with business leaders who would love to share this with other students and with others who want to learn more about this.
Yeah, I especially love working with students. Seeing their excitement about what's possible.
So Andy Howard asks, did you sometimes find your journey towards conscious capitalism lonely, where others were either skeptical or didn't understand your direction?
Yes, yes, a lot. Um, yeah, and so I first came in really enthusiastic about what I had learned. It was like somebody else called it like I came home from like Harry Potter camp, and and I came back really enthusiastically ready to take all these ideas forward. And I've talked to a lot of leaders who said the same thing. Like I have like a million ideas, and I want to bring them all back. And I recognized that I needed to um, temper not necessarily my enthusiasm, but how I brought it forward. I had different experiences with my board of directors who were not really ready to embrace um, all the tenets of conscious capitalism. They would call my focus on culture the culture thing. I'm like, it's not a thing. This is something that we're doing forever. And so it was an education. But as I did educate my executive team, and we cascaded it through the organization, we we developed a common language, and so we were able to communicate more effectively and get to the end results that we were looking for much more quickly. So it was and this took it for me. It probably took like 3 years for us to really effectively get the organization to not necessarily embrace what we were doing with conscious capitalism, but understand the impact of it. Because some people didn't really want to, and they just couldn't. And so we had to meet them where they are with language that makes sense to the individual. And it was not necessarily the leadership team or the board, but it might be people throughout the organization. But it is absolutely possible, and it's just a matter of educating and re-educating, like everything else that you do. Training has half-lives, and you just keep reinforcing it.
So we only have 2 minutes left. Let's try to get through 2 more questions if we can. Rod Thorne, what gets into a meaty issue? How do you handle being a servant leader and loving and caring about your employees when you have to reduce your workforce because of financial challenges, like a lot of business leaders are going through today? And I would expand that to some people think that conscious capitalism is something you can do in good times and is ejected during bad times. How would you respond to that? How would you provide guidance for others?
Yeah, the first question about doing restructuring is always hard, and there's no easy way to do it. And it's not a matter of being a conscious capitalist and not being a conscious capitalist. You have to do what's right for your business, and you do it with as you are a servant leader, with empathy, with integrity, with transparency and care. And at least that's the way I had to do it. And so because I did a turnaround to start, and then the transformation, the turnaround had to get us financially healthy, and that required a major restructuring. As a matter of fact, we had to do two. And so it just with that, so looking at what our financials look like, how can we support outplacement? How can we have the language, the conversations with people about what is happening? How could we reduce fear among the people who were staying and staying with us, so they could understand and support the direction of the company? And it is hard. There's no doubt about it. But just stick to your values. And then the question about conscious capitalism just for good times. Um, it Conscious capitalism is for all times, and it's especially important in difficult times. And when you are challenged as a leader through the difficult times, you have to stick to your values, and you need to be focused on your culture, because the culture is afraid too. The people are afraid too, and so we need to going through, whether it's COVID or in restructuring as a result, or upcoming impending recession, possibly, maybe not. These are all scary things for everybody, and so sticking with your values, your higher purpose, you will galvanize your organization to support you as a leader through really challenging times, and people do amazing things when there's trust as the foundation. So in my opinion, conscious capitalism is great for good times. It's critical for difficult times.
Karen, we've used up all the time we had allotted for you, so thank you so much. But before we go and before you have to run, let me ask, what is the biggest takeaway that you hope that people listening in, learning about conscious capitalism, leave this conversation with?
Well, first, I'm so happy that we have this group here today, and I hope that they will continue to join you for other conversations with other conscious capitalists. Join us as an organization as we start, through our virtual, the virtual things that we're doing, and then also when we finally get back together. So welcome to everybody. And I think that it's the conversation, just continue this conversation and dig into what it is, reach out, connect with me and others on the board, and have conversations about what is possible. There's just amazing stories of different ways that conscious leaders have used the philosophy to create amazing organizations.
Karen, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with everyone today, and for being a conscious capitalist, being on the board, just everything that you're doing. This has been illuminating. And to everyone else listening, we didn't get to every question. Unfortunately, we didn't have time for it, but this is just an introduction. Like Karen said, we want to keep the conversation going with you. So if you're interested in learning more, reach out to us at our website, consciouscapitalism.org. Join us for next week's virtual gathering coming up, and the others coming up for the rest of this year. We're here to support you, and there is a community of conscious capitalists that want to support you on your journey. Before you go, we have a short survey that's going to be shared in the chat box. It's, if you can take 2 minutes and fill it out to let us know, not so much about on the content of this, we think that's awesome, but the structure of this and what more we can do to better support you and make offerings like this even more valuable going forward. With that, thank you everyone for joining us, and I hope everyone has a fantastic day. Thank you, Karen.
Thank you. It's great to see you.